Hello and welcome to my channel, or to my babies in the house, welcome back to my channel. My name is Adeline. I am a fashion content creator based in Nigeria. Here on my channel I teach you how to sew, so I share sewing tutorial videos. I try to make sewing as easy as possible. I go deep too when it's necessary. So even if you're a beginner, that journey you want to start now. You can actually make it possible. Now on today's episode I am teaching you how to draft your basic bodice block. This is an upgraded version. From this basic bodice block you can get your corsets, your bustiers, your tube tops, whatever pattern you're trying to draft, and the foundation has to be from your bodice. With this pattern I'm giving to you today, you can make it possible. Now before we start off this video, I am going to be talking about measurement, and I would insert an image here that you'll look into. You can actually pause this video if it's too fast for you, so you can go through these images. The first one is the horizontal images, which is from the nape of your neck to your bust point, your underbust, your waist, your hip, your knee, your floor length. And the next one is the vertical measurement, with it's your body circumference measurement. Now these body circumference measurements are divided by 4. Now the 3 body measurements that are divided by 4 is the bust, the waist, and the hip. And the reason why it's divided by 4 is because this part is 1, this part is 1, this part is 1, and this is another part. And remember, your fabrics are folded into 4. So when you fold for the back 2, you fold for the front 2, that's 4. And that's why your bust, waist, and hip is divided by 4. Now one thing I want you to understand is from the nape of your shoulder to your waist for the back and for the front is different. Now whatever that difference is, we'll use that to plot a bust dart. So the first measurement we'll take down is our horizontal measurement, which is from the shoulder to the bust point, the waistline, the underbust, and the hip, which I believe from the images you have seen earlier, you know what to do. Okay, so now here I'm taking from my shoulder to my bust point, my underbust, my waist, and my hip. And this bodice block will stop at the hip. So you connect your lines and make sure to indicate what each line is, so you don't make any mistakes. So that's my hip line, my waist, my underbust, and my bust point. Now the next thing we'll do here is to mark our shoulder. My across back shoulder is 8 inches. So I'll mark it. And you know the 3 inches standard for a neck width, so I'll mark my 3 inches. My shoulder slope for my front is 1.25, so you come down by 1.25 and connect that to your neck width. Now when you're done drafting your pattern, you can alter your neck width to your preference. Okay, it mustn't be 3 inches. So from the neck slope, we'll come down by our armhole measurement, which I'll indicate the formula here for you. Then from there, now we have gotten our chest line. So on this chest line, you also go ahead to mark your shoulder measurement and connect it straight to your shoulder slope. Now the next thing we'll do is to create our armhole. So you place your tape from your shoulder slope to your chest line, mark the midpoint of your armhole, and come in by 0.75. Now you go ahead to mark the quarter of your bust measurement. When you mark it down, you use your curved ruler to connect from the quarter of your bust measurement to the 0.5 inches and straight to your shoulder slope, like so. So now you just mark your neck depth. For me, I just went in by 3. Like I said earlier, you can alter your neck depth to your preference. Okay, so now the next thing we'll do is to plot our waist dart. For me, I'm a plus size person, so I use a dart of 0.75, but if you're working for a small size person, you can use for 0.5. So 0.75 times 2, that's 1.5. My waistline from my center front, I'll come in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement, and I'll mark that same, whatever I have, I'll mark it on my bust point, and I'll also mark it on my hip. And to whatever your nipple to nipple measurement is, please add half of an inch to that. Then mark it, connect into a straight line, and then you plot your dart. I'll come down by 1 inch from my bust point to connect my waist dart. Connect your waist dart. Remember, for me, I used a waist dart of 0.75. So I'll just connect my dart to my hip line. So now the next thing we're going to do is to take in the vertical measurement of the waist and the hip. So on my waist, I'll mark quarter of my waist measurement plus 1.5 inches that I marked for my dart. And for the hip, so I forgot to tell you guys at the beginning of this video, I'll use one part of this paper for the front and the other part for the back, which I'm going to be indicating. And the width of this paper is quarter of my highest measurement, which is my hip. So now I'll just connect my line straight to the quarter of my hip, like I just said, and then from the waist I'll connect to the chest line. Try to make sure that your lines are not too pointy. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is to plan the bust dart, which is the difference between the shoulder to waist for the front and the back. For me, my difference is 2 inches, so I'll plot a bust dart from my bust point by come down by 2 inches, and then connect that straight to the bust point of my dart, just like I did. So this is how you plot your bust dart. Now when you would want to close your bust dart to draft out your pattern, you notice that there's a shortage of fabric. Now for you to replace that, you would mark the midpoint of your bust dart, which is 1 inch. You come out from the midpoint by half of an inch and use your roller to connect from that half of an inch to your chest line, and connect the other one to the 2 inches of the bust dart. So with this, you would not have any shortage of fabric when you cut out your bust dart. After this is done, this is basically our front pattern that is done. The next thing we're going to do is to draft out the back pattern. So here is the center front. This is always cut on fold. Okay, it depends. Nowadays it depends on the kind of designs you are trying to recreate, because most designs right now, even the center fronts, do have seam allowances, so it depends. Now let's draft out the back, and we would start this measurement. So we'll start with our horizontal measurement. So we'll mark from the shoulder to the chest line, the bust point, the waistline, and the hip. Now for my back, remember, from shoulder to waist is 15. You always need to know what your waist to hip is. Whatever your waist to hip is, make sure that's what you're using for both the back and the front. So the waist to hip, the main standard of a waist to hip is always 10 inches, but check your own measurement. Whatever that is, you maintain it. Okay, so now I'm just connecting my lines. So where is my underbust for my front is my waist for my back. If you're actually following everything I'm saying, you would understand to this point. So now this is my chest line, my bust point, my waist, and my hip. So as usual, the first thing we'll do, I don't even know what I was trying to do here. So the first thing I'm doing now is to mark my shoulder measurement. Remember, this part where my tape is starting from would be our center back. I'm marking my neck width, my neck depth. For the width, you're going to use the same 3 inches you use for the front. For the back, you can just change your neck depth. And for the shoulder slope for the back, I used 1 inch. So you connect it to your 3 inches, connect your shoulder line, and also connect your neckline. So now we'll create our armhole for the back. To do that is the same thing we did for the front. Mark the midpoint of your armhole, go in by 1/2 inch, but for the front we use 0.75. Now on the chest line, you will mark 1/4 of the bust measurement, and then connect the armhole. Use your curved ruler to place on the 3 notches or the 3 lines and just connect it. So now the next thing we'll do is to plot our back dart. So from the center back here, I'll come in by 5 inches. The same thing we did for the front. Mark the same 5 inches on the bust point and mark it on the hem, which is the hip also. And now for the back, I'm using 1 inch for dart. So I'm marking 1/2 inch on both sides. Connect and just connect the dart. Now for this dart, it can go straight to the bust point, while for the front, mine stopped 1 inch below the bust point. There's something called the center back dart, and this is done so your dress can have a proper fitting on your back. So to do this, on your waistline from the center back, you come in by 1/2 inch, and now from that 1/2 inch you take in 1/4 of your waist measurement plus the 1 inch for dart. Okay, so come in by 1/2 inch. From the 1/2 inch you take in 1/4 of your waist plus 1 inch for dart. Now use your ruler to connect this waist center back dart. From the waistline, you connect the 1/2 inch straight above your chest line, and then from the waist to the hip, you connect it and tilt it to the hip without taking anything from the hip. Okay, now I'm just connecting my side lines. Just connect your side lines like so. And after doing this, we are done drafting a basic bodice block. And from this pattern, you can get a corset, a Victorian corset, a bustier, a tube top. Use your own measurement and create it. Here I'm just marking out the dart so you know where you have to cut off from this pattern, and then you're also going to cut off the center back dart. This dart here does amazing things to your center back. You should try it in case you're not doing it already. So here is my final result. If you like it, please do not forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, turn your post notifications